Hi, hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about an entirely new brand, one that I have never bought anything from or mentioned on my channel before. And we have to preface this video by saying that this is all Claudia's fault. This is a Claudia made me buy it 150%. She literally put me up against the wall, put a gun against my head and said, you have to buy this. So here we are. The brand I'm talking about is called Wycon, and I've seen displays of this brand in stores in Sofia, but I'm not really familiar with them. I've never purchased anything before. I want to say they're in the caliber of Kiko, so they're not quite drugstore, they're not quite high-end, they're just a thing of their own. And they are an Italian brand, so all the products are also made in Italy. And the thing is, I saw Claudia's video when she published it last week. She posted a video talking about how these eyeshadows from Wycon, which are in their, what is it called again? The Visionary Eyeshadow formula, are essentially baked gelee dupes for the Blitz Astral shades from Pat McGrath Labs. You know, all of these baked gelee formulas that we have come to love and adore on this channel. So she posted a video last week where she talked about these new Wycon Visionary eyeshadows that are dupes for the Blitz Astral type baked gelee shades from, you know, Pat McGrath Labs, Bobbi Brown, and a limited number of other brands that even offer baked gelee eyeshadows in their portfolios. So at first I was like, I'm not even going to watch the video, what's the point? This is a brand that I probably can't get my hands on, I don't want to be tempted, so I didn't even watch the video. But in the end, I was bored, I was curious, so I went to watch the video, all the while thinking, I'm definitely not going to buy any of these. And obviously by the end of that video, I developed a deep desire to own these eyeshadows because they seemed like, you know, when people talk about dupes sometimes on YouTube, and you and I all find it very annoying because usually what they're talking about are color dupes and they're not really talking about actual texture formula type dupes. No, Claudia, and let me just mention, in case you didn't know, Claudia from B.O.B. Mindset, of course I'm going to link both her video and her channel in the description box below. She has a very discerning eye, she's a very critical person, and if she says that something is a dupe, then it is definitely something worth checking out because she's probably right. We've been joined by Elisa. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, when Claudia says that something is a dupe, then she's most likely correct. Everyone keeps interrupting my thoughts and I don't really know what I was going to say. Anyway, I was going to say, apparently these are a new formula for the brand. So this is a new release from them just a few months ago. These were released on the market. They're called their Visionary Eyeshadows. And I received a little package from the brand. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but I bought 3 of these eyeshadows, but I got 5, and I'll tell you in a second why. But essentially this is what they are called, and this is how you spell the name of the brand. I mean, that was obviously also in the title of my video, so I don't really know why I'm saying it again. But anyway, these are their Visionary eyeshadows, and their Visionary eyeshadows are essentially baked gelee formula, and from what I can tell, just touching them, swatching them, and looking at the ingredient list, they are pretty freaking indistinguishable from the high-end versions of these. So if you open a Pat McGrath Labs palette and you swatch a Blitz Astral shade, chances are very high that it is going to be extremely similar to these new Visionary eyeshadows from Wycon. So Wycon is an Italian brand, like I said, sold in Italy, made in Italy, and at first I thought chances are pretty slim that they're going to be shipping internationally. But lo and behold, at least within Europe, they ship. They're pretty fast with it. I didn't even have to pay for shipping because I crossed a certain threshold. In fact, I didn't cross the threshold, but let me tell you. So the reason I have 5 of these, my intention when I went on the website was to only buy 3 of the shades because after watching her video, after going through the list of eyeshadows that they currently have in that lineup, I decided that it's really only 3 of these eyeshadows that look to be very unique and something that I would really like to add to my collection. But at the time I was on the website, they were running a promotion of 3 + 2 for free, and I could not believe my eyes when it turned out that these are included in the promotion. So one of these will set you back about 15 euros, which I think is an extremely reasonable price given the formula that they are. I think the packaging is also quite cute, so they come in a little plastic packaging with the Wycon logo here, and you just pop them open like this. but I will show them to you in a little bit. Anyway, they cost about 15 euros a piece. By comparison, if you were to buy an eyeshadow like this from, let's say, Bobbi Brown, because that's the first one that comes to mind that even sells these in a single format. So let's say I take one of my Lux Bobbi Brown eyeshadows that is in a similar formula. The packaging is more luxurious, but these will set you back in Europe 50 euros a piece. You can get them on sale for 30 euros a piece, and these are twice less expensive, plus you can get them on sale. Imagine my shock and dismay when I realized that I can have 5 of these for the price of 3, and because including 5 of these in my order meant that I crossed the shipping, free shipping threshold, which was about 70 euros. Even though I ultimately only paid like 40 for something, I still qualified for the free shipping. So essentially, I purchased 3 of these eyeshadows, but I got 5 for an extremely good deal. And then when they arrived yesterday at home, of course I dug into them immediately, and the first thing I wanted to do is basically just like swatch them and touch them, because I was curious how similar they feel to the Blitz Astral shades that we love and cherish here. So let me just quickly show you how they look, and I'm going to choose one of the colors that is, I think, most similar to things that you've already seen from Pat McGrath and from Bobbi Brown. So this is one of the bonus colors that I bought. They are made in Italy, as you will come to find out if you look at the back of the packaging. Something that you cannot see on the back of the packaging is you can see the number of the eyeshadow, but unfortunately you can't see the actual name. And all of these have names, but I still have the box here, and according to the box, this shade is called Pink Sunrise. So this was one of the bonus shades that I bought, because it sounded like the type of shade that I really like to use as a topper for a number of my neutral looks. And let me show you how they look like up close and personal. Look at that gorgeous baked gelee formula. Then you have the logo of the brand imprinted into the design, and this is, I don't know what to tell you guys, this is indistinguishable from something like Astral Solstice. They're not exact dupes, because this has a bit more of like a pinkish hue running through it, but for all other intents and purposes they are indistinguishable. I grabbed one of my Lux eyeshadow palettes here from Bobbi Brown, and I just wanted to show you how like visually similar these textures look. And the eyeshadow that I want to compare it is this one here from Bobbi Brown, which is a dupe for Astral Solstice. So let me just quickly show you how these swatch on the fingers. So on my middle finger here I'm going to take the Wycon eyeshadow. Here I have Astral Solstice, and here is the shade from Wycon. I think you can't really tell the difference. They are basically indistinguishable from each other in terms of their texture. I think in terms of the color they're slightly different, but I figured an eyeshadow like this is always something that I can pass on to somebody else if I really can't figure out the use for it by myself. Okay, now that I'm swatching them next to each other, essentially they're the same shade. So this is Astral Solstice and this is Pink Sunrise from Wycon. Maybe just slightly more pink hued compared to Astral Solstice, but the difference is quite tiny. Now, like I said, this was a bonus shade, and eventually if I don't have any use for it in my current collection, I'm just going to pass this eyeshadow along, because technically I didn't even pay for it. But you know, it is the kind of eyeshadow that I do use a lot for a variety of different looks, and I figured maybe it's good to have for traveling or something. We'll see. But essentially it is safe to say that in my opinion as well, these are dupes for the baked gelee formulas that are offered by higher end brands. They feel very similar to the touch. They have that like sandy, like sandpapery, very dry feeling to them. They're very sparkly, as you can see, they're very glittery, and I think they're probably going to apply and feel exactly the same on the lids. And because they're made in Italy, and we know that this formula comes only from labs in Italy, we can be fairly certain that these are probably made by the same labs that produce, you know, Pat McGrath labs and Bobbi Brown, and this wouldn't be the first time. You probably remember that Kiko released 3 eyeshadow palettes a few months ago, which were essentially dupes for the Queen's, like the Queen formula from Pat McGrath labs. They even had the same layout. The ones from Kiko were slightly smaller in size, but that was the only difference between them. Like even price-wise, they were quite comparable to each other. So essentially, I think the same labs that are making the higher end formulas are also catering to these Italian brands like Kiko and Wycon, and I am like fairly certain that I can recommend these as dupes for the Blitz Astral shades. Of course, I don't know what this all means for all of you who are on the other side of the pond, because in my rush I didn't actually go to check exactly how far internationally they ship. They do ship within Europe, and I know some of you are located here in Europe as well, so you can go check these out. By the way, for those of you who are situated in Europe, I ordered these eyeshadows in the weekend. They were shipped on Wednesday and they arrived on Friday, so also the shipping and everything was handled very, very fast, everything without any issues. I received them in this beautiful little package, and yeah, I have no complaints. Business went really smoothly. So now let me show you the rest of the shade. So you already saw my first bonus shade, so this was the shade Pink Sunrise. Let me just quickly swatch it again, because I want to have the swatches of all of these next to each other so you can see all the 5 shades. And of course my hand is already covered in glitter, and it is also wet, so the swatch of this now is quite much more wet, shiny looking than it was before, which was a bit more dispersed. So the formula like this you can apply over the glitter glue, you can apply wet if you want it to look this shiny. If you want to just use it, you know, dabbled as a bit of like fairy dusting on your lids, you just grab a few flakes and you put them on your lids. Okay, the second bonus shade that I got, and I think the one that I was quite surprised by, because based on the swatch I didn't really know quite what to expect. It looked like a lavender purple with a golden duochrome, but in real life it's much more interesting than that. So this is the shade 04 Marshmallow, and there's certainly a lavender undertone in here, like a cooler lavender undertone, but the sparkles in here are actually multicolor. There is no one specific like type of sparkle. I see a bit of green, I see a bit of gold. There is quite a bit going on in this eyeshadow, and I think this is one of the eyeshadows that I want to use for my look today. So this is the shade Marshmallow, which, like I said, was another one of the bonus shades that I bought, because it just looked like a very interesting shade and I was intrigued by it. So I'm very curious how this is going to look on the lid, but it is definitely not what I expected based on the swatch on the website. Mostly it is much more cool toned, and at first it really reminded me of Astral Venusian Orchid from the Utopian Dream palette. I'm going to do a little swatch of that shade in a little bit next to this shade, so you can see the how they look next to each other. They're not dupes of each other. I think the one in the Utopian Dream palette is actually a little bit warmer in tone. But let's first talk about the 3 eyeshadows that I did want to purchase. So these are the 3 that were technically bought by me. So first and foremost we have the shade 05 Gold Rose, and this is also one of the eyeshadows that from here onwards, by the way, we're talking about eyeshadows that Claudia bought as well. So this eyeshadow here basically is quite similar to an eyeshadow in the Celestial Odyssey palette, but in the Celestial Odyssey palette is just a regular eyeshadow. I haven't swatched them side by side yet. I would really like to. I think this eyeshadow initially reminds quite a bit of VR Nectar from Pat McGrath Labs, but spoiler, I already know that it's not, because I've seen Claudia's video where she swatched next to VR Nectar. VR Nectar is a lot warmer in tone. This is much more, this is actually smoother compared to the other 2 eyeshadows. So if the other 2 eyeshadows were your classic like Astral formula, this maybe feels a bit more like a VR. And this specific eyeshadow shifts from like a neutral bronzy goldy color to a little bit of a greenish pinkish hue. So that's why it reminded me immediately of an eyeshadow that is in the Celestial Odyssey palette. So this eyeshadow right here, you know, it has that VR Nectar like vein running through it with like the pinkish goldish duochrome, but this is much more neutral in tone, much less warm in tone. So this is the shade Gold Rose. And the 2 darker shades that I bought, of course I had to buy the olive golden shade. So this is the shade 08 Golden Army, and this is a very interesting eyeshadow. This is super cool. It looks like a dupe of our beloved Gigabyte from Subversive. By the way, this also feels like a VR. This is also less chunky compared to the first 2 shades that I swatched. But this is like an army green color, but what I find really intriguing about it, and I don't know whether you're going to be able to see now on camera, there are blue, like teal blue purpley looking particles in here of glitter. So I think this is going to be a really interesting one to put on the lids. And I can tell you again, because I saw it in Claudia's video, it is not a dupe for Gigabyte. Gigabyte is a lot more like yellow and antique gold in tone. This is much more of like a true like olive green, and the blue sparkles are definitely very unique to this shade. So this is Golden Army. And the last eyeshadow that I purchased, of course, is the shade 09 Deep Emerald, which is another one of the shades that Claudia also showed in her video. So this is again an eyeshadow that reminds us of a Pat McGrath eyeshadow, of course, of the shade that is present in the Sublime palette, but again, they're not quite similar to each other. This again has a little bit more of like a chunky texture to it, and what you can appreciate immediately, I think, is that the sparkle in here is much more blue toned compared to, I think, the one in the Sublime palette. We're going to swatch them in a little bit side by side, but yeah, this has that dark smoky base. Both of these have a smoky base to them, just like Gigabyte, just like I can't remember the name from the Sublime palette, the green shade from the Sublime palette, but I think the sparkle and the overlay is slightly different. So these are all the 5 eyeshadows that I purchased: Pink Sunrise, Marshmallow, Rose Gold, Golden Army, and Deep Emerald. Yeah, I'm trying here with a little bit of artificial lighting because the sun is currently out, so we can do a bit of artificial lighting here, so you can see these eyeshadow sparkle in artificial lighting, and hopefully you can see the blue shimmer in that Golden Army shade. It's really interesting. Okay, there isn't much more that I can do for you guys, so let's now do just a couple of comparison swatches. Like I said, the shade Marshmallow immediately reminded me of Astral Venusian Orchid from Mothership 9. Okay, so we're talking about these two shadows here. Let me quickly swatch Astral Venusian Orchid right here underneath Marshmallow. So you can see Astral Venusian Orchid has a similar like vibe to it, with like that lavendery pinky hue, but there's quite a bit more of that warmer golden sparkle to it. I think the sparkle here in Marshmallow is much more cool toned. These are all so glittery, they're literally blinding my camera. Let's watch the shade that I was referring to earlier from the Celestial Odyssey palette. So that is this shade right here. This shade right here, this is the shade Bronze Nova, which in my opinion is, you know, the same types of shiftiness as the shade Gold Rose, but it's just not enough. Oh, okay, what do you know? This is actually much brighter and much more vibrant tones. Yeah, so the beauty of this shade here from Wycon is that it's quite neutral toned. Both VR Nectar and this shade from Celestial Odyssey are much more vibrant in the types of duochromes they deliver, whereas this shade here from Wycon is much more neutral in tone. So let's take a look at both the green shade as well as VR Nectar over here. You can see immediately the green shade is a completely different tone, but let me quickly swatch that right here. So you see this is much more like a true forest green, whereas this is leaning towards the teal side. And where am I going to put VR Nectar? I'm going to put VR Nectar right here above, so you can see immediately how much, and I hope you can see and my camera isn't blinding you completely. They are a similar idea, but VR Nectar is much more vibrant in the delivery of both tones. So the pink is much more intense and the golden green is much more intense. This is just so much more neutral toned. And finally, I was too lazy to bring out the actual Subversive palette, but I did bring the dupe that we have of Gigabyte here from the Bridgerton 2 palette that we can compare to the Army Green from Wycon. And you can see they're actually, again, quite different, because Gigabyte is gorgeous. It has that beautiful, like, yellowish antique gold tone with a slight bit of even, like, pinkish sparkle to it. And again, this is more desaturated in tone. A lot of these are just not as saturated and vibrant as the counterparts from Pat McGrath Labs. So this is again much more desaturated, much more like a neutral olive tone, and it has blue sparkle. So I think that's going to look completely different and give a completely different effect compared to Gigabyte. Alright, I've zoomed you in a little bit, and I just wanted to preface this by saying I per se wanted to wear Guinevere today. Hubs and I are going to a very fancy dinner and I really wanted to wear my Guinevere lipstick. So we're not going to be doing anything with the really colorful, like smoky eyeshadows, we are going to be focusing a little bit more on like the neutral tones. And I'm not completely decided on what I'm going to use from the neutral eyeshadows, but like I said, I'm quite intrigued by the shade Marshmallow, and I might want to mix it in a little bit with like the Astral Solstice type dupe, the shade Pink Sunrise, or I would like to use the shade Gold Rose. I have not decided yet, so I'm going to keep these three out here and we're going to decide later on. But for starters, I'm going to take my beloved Body Heat quad here from Tom Ford, and I'm going to get started on a very like neutral look. I'm going to use these eyeshadows here from the Tom Ford Body Heat quad, so this more like taupey, pinkish leaning brown shade and this champagne shade, and then we're going to do a bit of layering of sparkles from the Wycon eyeshadows. But I'm first going to take the deeper shade from Tom Ford and put it here on the outer side of my lids, and then I'm going to blend it through the crease. This is a look that I do quite a bit, and then I always put some sort of Astral Blitz sparkle or one of my liquid eyeshadows to create a bit more, you know, a party look on the eyes. But I absolutely love the texture of these eyeshadows, and since they're also baked gelee, they're going to play really well with the texture of these Wycon eyeshadows. So I'm just going to lay a little bit of that shade here, slightly blend it out, repeat on the other eye. And I am very curious for your input on more, you know, content with these Wycon eyeshadows. Do you want to see all of them in action, or do you think, well, I can't really get these, so I don't really care? I would love to hear your feedback, because I'm definitely going to use them a lot in my, you know, private life, so my non-YouTube life. But I'm curious, if you are interested to see more of these, then I will definitely try to do videos featuring all of them. And I'm very curious what you think about this, like generally speaking, just the fact that, you know, lower tier brands are now starting to offer these formulas as well. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly when it comes to these eyeshadows is that I was quite shocked at how easily I added 5 new single eyeshadows to my collection. And we're talking about someone who generally claims that they don't like to have single eyeshadows, and now I have a full drawer of them, and I bought 5 in the span of like just a few days, which was a little bit shocking to me. And I was like, is that really a smart idea? I think it has a lot to do with the fact that this baked gelee formula, we just covet it so highly that when we see a brand offer it, we go meerkat for it, and we stop applying any sort of like logical and reasonable thinking. So I think I need to pace myself a little bit with these. And like I said, there is a possibility that I will declutter at least one of these, because I have a version of it over and over in my collection. But still, even 4 new eyeshadows is a lot. I'm going to take the champagne from Tom Ford, and I'm going to apply that basically in the inner corner and on the inner portion of my lids. I am going to grab a slightly smaller pencil type brush first though, and run that deeper brown here on the lower lashes as well, really gently, just to make the look a bit more cohesive. So yeah, just like that, I have 5 new single eyeshadows in my collection. I am very happy that they are baked gelee though, because the baked gelee formula is offered still by a very limited amount of brands, and finding them is such a affordable price range is also a complete shock to me, and I think another one of the reasons I went a bit bonkers. But I will definitely be keeping an eye out for what Wycon is going to add to this line, and maybe just make a decision. I'm only going to buy the ones that are really unique, and I think most of the ones that I purchased are quite unique. You know what? I think we're just going to go for a little bit of that marshmallow shade. So I am going to maybe mix a bit of that marshmallow shade together with the Pink Sunrise. So I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to go first into the marshmallow shade and then into the Pink Sunrise shade. But just like with my other astral shades, I'm taking a few flakes, very few flakes, and I'm going to press them here on the center portion of the lid. Ooh, that is intense. That is, you know, exactly behaving like a astral shade from Pat McGrath Labs. And I'm just gently pressing that here onto the lids, and I'm going to do the same with the other shade, the Golden Sunrise shade. Just press a few flakes here in the center portion of the lid specifically, And I think especially that marshmallow shade is probably going to come through more lavender if I apply it over something that is a bit more lavender in tone. I think now it's coming across probably mostly as a neutral shade, but I'm going to shine on artificial light in a bit so we can see how this looks under artificial lighting with all the like sparklies coming through. But yeah, they're behaving in exactly the same way, they look in exactly the same way, so by me these are like one-on-one dupes for the Blitz Astrals from Pat McGrath Labs. Okay guys, let's do sparkle moment here. Ooh, these look exactly like the Blitz Astral shades. Wow, look at that. I'm hoping that you're seeing on screen what I'm seeing in the mirror, because what I'm seeing is crazy. That multicolor sparkle from Marshmallow is really coming through, and it is looking absolutely freaking magical. Alright you guys, so this is a wrap on this video. This is a super like simple neutral look. I'm happy to come back and do looks with the other eyeshadows. I also think that just in terms of like the practicality of it, I'm probably going to end up getting the most use out of the neutral eyeshadows, and I'm going to use the greens a little bit less often. That's not to say I'm not going to love and enjoy the greens, but you know, it's just the type of colors and eyeshadows that I'm not going to use all that often compared to the neutral shades. And I don't really know what else to add besides these have like 100% my stamp of approval. These are a one-on-one use for the Blitz Astral shades at a very affordable price. So if you can get your hands on them and you would like to try them because you love this formula as much as I do, then I highly recommend them. Do let me know what kind of content you would like to see with this, if you would like to see any content with them at all. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Do let me know all of your thoughts about these eyeshadows in the comments. I can't wait to chat with you there. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!